Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Guys, we have been all following the state of affairs with the oil. I am pretty sure if you own the car, you definitely have. But the main question in perspective of Ukraine that we are asking ourselves is how much this is influencing Putin and how much money he's going to make from it. And I'm here to tell you that he's not going to be making as much money as he thought he would. Because Ukrainian kinetic sanctions are working, and they're working good. If you missed it a little bit, in the last couple of days, Ukraine has been focusing on taking out Russian export potential of oil. With the prices of oil going up, Russia is seeing a big potential to fill in their budget as they will be able to export a lot more oil than they would beforehand. And we see that there is a certain relief on sanctions coming from the United States side as they're allowing Russia to sell oil illegally to some countries that they were not allowed before. And European Union also pushing back on their ban on import of the Russian energy resources further than it was planned before. So both European Union and the United States are looking at Russia and kind of like, well, should we or should we not? Maybe. And a country with some resemblance of sanity left, Ukraine looks at this weird dance that Europeans and Americans are doing and thinks that, well, we should take care of this ourselves. And so they did. In the last week, Ukrainians were able to take out a lot of port capacity of Russia, specifically targeting the ports of Ust-Luga and Primorsk in the north. This is close to Estonia and Finland in the north, and also Novorossiysk in the south. This is in the Black Sea near Crimea. And the strikes were extensive. There are videos and satellite images showing that it is completely covered in smoke. It's been burning for multiple days. There are satellite images from further apart showing that this smoke cloud is now spreading about 550 kilometers from the strike area. The strikes around the Vyborg also hit not just the oil facility, but also the shipyard in that area where Russian ships were stored, and potentially some of the oil tankers got also touched in this attack. But more importantly, Ust-Luga near St. Petersburg, the main export hub in the Baltic Sea, has also been hit extensively by the Ukrainian drones, and some people argue if there was Flamingo missiles in use or not. The images from satellites are pretty damning, showing that there was a lot of damage done and a lot of the storage and also loading facilities are burning. After that, the reports were that there was another strike to kind of continue on the good tradition that the Ukrainians have started. And in general, Ukrainians are targeting this whole network. They are also targeting not only the pipelines that I mentioned and ports in Primorsk and Novorossiysk, but they're also targeting the oil refining facility in Yaroslavl, which is located right here at the intersection of these pipelines. It's one of the key facilities for Russia to specifically refine the oil towards the export capacity needed. And this led to devastating results for Russia, where in recent days 40% of Russian export have now been halted because the facilities are not operational. They stopped working. So even if the oil price is pretty high, Russia is having trouble selling and delivering that oil and essentially missing out on opportunity. A lot of people ask me, how bad is it for Russia with the increased oil price? There were certain economists that calculated what is it doing for Russian budget. But in a nutshell, Russian January and February was pretty devastating. By the end of February, Russia has used up about 91% of their planned budget deficit. So they were almost out of their planned deficit for the year. Unfortunately, with the recent oil prices, Russia would probably be able to sort of a backfill and not rely so much on budget deficit, aka on cuts in the Russian economy. But to do that, they would require quite high oil price. So if you want to have a simple measurement to understand whether Russia is breaking even or not breaking even with the higher oil prices, then what you need to look at is that for the next 10 months, including March, April, May, and so on, all until December, Russia would need on average oil price to be $86 per barrel of crude oil Brent. This is the target price that Russia needs, again, on average. So now it is higher than this, so later it can be lower than this, but if Russia is able to hit the 86, this is the point of us essentially stating that Russia is able to more or less balance this budget this year. The only thing that I would add to this asterisk and the analysis that I've heard, that this is the analysis that was not taking into account the Ukrainian ability to take out major parts of the Russian export. So this is not taking into account that 40% of the Russian export has now been stopped. Generally, a lot of you might say, well, Georgie, Ukraine already did a lot of strikes against the Russian oil last year. So how is this year different? There are three areas how this is different. Area number one, depth. Ukrainians are able to strike further. Ukrainians are able to have more ability to reach places that Russia was not prepared to defend. So now Russians are having trouble even in the areas that they thought were previously safe, even against the previous Ukrainian drones. Second point, width or loudness or capacity, like power, that you can say. This is how much damage Ukraine can do. In previous year, what Ukraine was targeting mostly, they were targeting highly refined gas facilities because highly octane gas required some very sensitive facilities such as a distillation tower. And in that distillation tower was basically dependent the whole facility to refine these high octane fuels. So Ukrainians used drones with not a lot of payload to fly in and destroy those distillation towers, and it dealt a lot of damage for the Russian gas, but not that much damage for the oil as a whole. Now we see the campaign changing in a lot of sense. Ukraine are sending a lot more drones. These drones are a lot more powerful. More than that, Ukrainians are also now using missiles, and the number of missiles Ukraine is using is increasing. So now the types of damages and the depth and strike of those damages are increasing significantly. It is no longer just a distillation tower. Now a lot more other products, oil products and crude oil itself is now going to get targeted. And finally is the Russian response. Russia has been blooded dry, so to say, because Ukrainian deep strike capabilities have been growing significantly, and a lot of times they've been going actually after the Russian anti-air assets. It's just something that is not reported by the media. We hear about Ukraine launching drones towards Russia, and then suddenly we get no images, nothing is shown. So people are like, oh, I guess Ukraine didn't hit anything. That is not the case. A lot of these times, Ukraine was just preparing for their future strikes or taking out some of the Russian anti-air assets. And this already is making a lot of things difficult for Russia. Russia by itself already had trouble defending a lot of their assets just because of the sheer size. But now, if there is not enough anti-air assets, in many places it is the case, Russia is now having trouble defending against the scale of attacks that Ukraine is putting forward, especially if we're talking something about like missiles, Flamingo, and hopefully some ballistic missiles by Ukraine that will be coming soon. Long story short, this year's Ukrainian started anti-oil campaign is completely different beast to what Russia has already experienced last year. Estimates were that it cost Russia something around 40 to 60 billion. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. the total damages that Ukraine did. This year, we could expect a lot more than that and potentially even neglect a lot of the Russian growth whatsoever. But Ukraine is not going only after the oil facilities. Second target of the Ukrainian campaign was chemical facilities. I think there is a good reason why Ukraine is doing, because all of these chemical facilities are dealing with production of essentially explosives for the Russian military. So in the 13 attacks in the last 40 days, Metafax Chemicals, the Dragobush, Uralchem, Akron, Kuybyshev Azot, Metafrax, and so on, and so on, and so on. Multiple facilities, the same facilities sometimes hit multiple times. A lot of the chemical facilities are being hit all over Russia, and some of them are really big and are being hit by Flamingo missiles, and the explosions are massive and damages are extensive that they're even closing their operation. Again, Russian weakness is that they don't have a distributed network of factories. Russia was always betting on the fact that there was no chance in hell that anyone would reach any kind of their further facilities, and they were just building mega factories, and now these mega factories are a Russian Achilles heel that Ukraine is going to be exploiting. We should not expect that these damages are going to cause Russia to have less performance on the front line, especially with the drones and everything. What will this help with is with a lot of the Russian aviation, because one of the biggest threats that Ukraine still cannot find proper answer to is Russian big bombs, essentially either 250 kilos glide bombs or even bigger option like a half a ton, which is like a big boy of gliding bombs, 500 kilo glide bombs. Majority of those 500 kilos is actually the explosives that are being poured into these just metal casings and then slapped some wings on top of it. And that's the Russian weapons. That's a lot of explosive material that needs to be prepared. Now, if Ukraine is going to cripple a lot of these explosive factories and chemical factories, then suddenly Russian aviation becomes a lot less capable. Suddenly, maybe it's not going to be any more 500 kilo bombs, a lot less 250 kilo bombs, and Russia will be forced to use some kind of a smaller, like 100 kilo bombs. A 100 kilo bomb is still dangerous, but Russian precision on these bombs is not very high. They are able to use them only because of their abundance for them. So Ukrainians are doing pretty well at undercutting Russia in the aspects that truly matter for the front line. And that is great news for us all. And the best way for you to support Ukrainian efforts to stop Russia is to participate in fundraisers. So please join up for our fundraiser for the FPVs for the Black Raven Battalion of the 93rd Brigade in Ukraine. I've been there personally. Amazing guys. They are super thankful to everyone who is helping us out. Please do this and let's help Ukraine together. This is truly a great cause. But we continue. A lot of people are asking me to please comment on some of the developments with the United States. And my position has been very clear and it still is the same. I do not consider United States to be an ally of Ukraine. They are not acting as an ally. They are providing zero help. Last year, they have provided about 500 million in total aid, and that aid was actually previously allocated by Biden. It was just kind of like a leftovers. And some people might say it was like, well, there is intelligence. Well, I actually got a little bit around, and let's just say that maybe intelligence is not actually provided totally for free to Ukraine. Makes you wonder then, yeah, it's a completely different perspective if United States is not providing anything for free to Ukraine whatsoever. But in any case, when I'm talking about United States, I obviously talk about the current administration. I know full well that majority of people in the United States do support Ukraine, and I want to say thank you for that. But importantly, there was an interesting conversation between Rubio and Kaja Kallas, the High Representative for the Foreign Affairs of the European Union, where she essentially threw it in his face, stating that last year in the meeting, he says that if Russia will obstruct US attempts to end the war, Washington will run out of patience and further steps will be taken against the Kremlin. And year has passed, well, Russia has not budged, so where is your patience, man? I mean, it's a bit of funny, me, but this doesn't really matter, guys. Again, United States doesn't really influence. And a lot of people got really worried because of what President Zelensky said, with the United States essentially pushing Ukraine to accept some kind of a bad deal with Ukraine moving out of Donbass area, and then US will provide quote-unquote security guarantees that are unknown. What kind of security guarantees? And President Zelensky stated this in very clear terms, that this is what US is pushing for. And we heard this coming from Donald Trump's mouth as well. The difficulty here is that Rubio came and responded to specifically this statement, saying that Zelensky is just a liar and he is not telling the truth about this, to which Zelensky then responded, no, that is actually the truth. You are pressuring us with this. Rubio put it forward as a, well, this is not US position. This is what Russia is proposing. It just happens to be that United States is pressuring Ukraine to accept the Russian position. So it's not US position, it's just Russian position, but it's still for Ukraine to accept or not accept. It's a stupid situation. And again, if we take into account that United States is not really providing aid for Ukraine for free, if we take into account that there has been little to no support from the Trump administration, and even the Pearl program, where other countries in the world would buy weapons from United States and then United States would deliver those weapons to Ukraine, now there are reports that Donald Trump's administration just wants to basically steal that money by reallocating these funds to backfill the stuff that they need in the Middle East. Well, then, I mean, this is just stealing. If you have paid for the product, but the product is not delivered to you, which is what exactly is happening. European states or other world states are buying produce from United States, and United States, instead of delivering that produce, is just saying, well, we'll keep both the money and the produce. That is very much what it is. So the point of the matter is, if you put this all in perspective, then it becomes absolutely clear that President Zelensky will not accept any kind of bad deal just because United States just do not have any leverage. I know there is a lot of dancing and there is a lot of bootlicking around Trump, and a lot of the people want to have some kind of good negotiations with the United States, and I understand why, because beyond Trump there is a lot of people that they want to work with behind the scenes, and there have been some nice productive cooperation with the United States by the Europeans. But still, if this is the situation, and if Ukraine will be pushed to the wall, Ukraine will never accept a bad deal. And Zelensky and everyone else understands what is the situation on the ground very clearly. So trust in Ukraine, trust in Ukrainian armed forces. And talking about Ukraine making good decisions, President Zelensky visited the United Arab Emirates, where, I mean, you can see it for yourself. Like, it's a great atmosphere where Ukrainian representatives are signing already the first deals for getting the anti-air systems delivered to the United Arab Emirates. This will probably include both the systems themselves, the training, and long, as far as stated here, over 10-year cooperation agreement between the countries. And this is just a start. Ukraine, as I stated before, is on the brink of a major influx. And I think this is the best part. Ukraine is becoming a security provider, and being a security provider comes with a big paycheck. So great to be supporting Ukraine, because Ukraine has been doing a lot to become stronger, and they are being stronger every day now. And to finish on a positive note, worthy of a donation for the FPV drones, some story about the partisans inside of Russia that sold to the Russian military some insoles with heating that Russians would put in their shoes. The only problem is that these heating elements were not actually heating elements. That was an explosive piece that was sewed into the insoles. So Russians would put this insole into their shoe, put the wires connected to the battery to heat up his foot, and then his foot would get improved right there. I love you guys. Trust in Ukraine, support Ukrainian armed forces, Slava Ukraini, and I will see you next time.